So, good morning, everyone. My name is Inge Nickel, and I'm the director of the Brazelton Centre here in the UK. And I'd like to wish you a very warm welcome to our very exciting and inspirational webinar, The Opportunity to Influence a Lifetime, which is part of a series of webinars that we're hosting, and this is the second this year. And this one today is part of our annual Baby Communication Week. We have a very packed couple of hours and have therefore not got time for questions at the end of today's webinar. But do please ask questions via the Q&A link in Zoom, and hopefully we will have some time after each talk. We have some amazing speakers today, and I am delighted to introduce you to our first speaker, who is Sarah Lamb. Sarah is a qualified midwife, and she's also our communication manager and the creative director of Baby Communication Week. Sarah is going to introduce the theme for this week, Getting Started and Inspired to Support a Parent-Infant Relationship. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Inge. Yeah, let me add my welcome to Inge's. Thank you so much for joining us over the next 2.5 hours and for being part of this webinar and for being part of Baby Communication Week, which is happening this week. We're right in the middle of the week. And it's just been a delight to see everyone celebrating and raising awareness with us this week. So thank you for that. Now, as Inge mentioned, this is the second in our series of information and inspiration webinars. And our aim with all of these sessions is to leave you as practitioners feeling that you've learned something new or you've seen something from a new perspective, and also that you leave feeling inspired and motivated afresh in your work with families. So we really hope we can do that again for this one. So in particular this morning, or over this lunchtime period, we're going to be thinking about getting inspired to support the parent-infant relationship. And I think we all know just how important supporting relationships between parents and other carers and their newborn baby is, getting things off to a really good start. And that is really because the key context in which babies grow and develop happily and healthily is really found in the quality of their primary caregiver relationship as they learn about themselves and about the world. And so really us investing and supporting in these relationships, I do believe should be a real priority for excuse me, for us all as practitioners and wider society. I thought we'd start off with this lovely word, opportunity. The way I like to think of the way that we all have a part in this, and there's something that we can all do, is that we have an opportunity to give babies the best start possible. And where does this come from? So I believe it comes from the contact that we have with families at this stage. We're meeting people at this particular point in their lives, whether that be in their homes, in clinics, in hospitals, in family hubs, in antenatal classes, a whole range of things. These families that we're coming into contact with. And the next part of that is the opportunity we have as people who are in a position of trust that parents and families look to for information and reassurance. So this is a real point of opportunity that we all have, no matter what our particular role is. And we're going to hear more this morning or over this lunchtime about why it's worth supporting the parent-infant relationship and some ideas about how we go about that. But I just wanted to start with a short kind of getting us started and some small things that we can all do. I know that in our roles, we are all really, really busy, really overstretched. And so I don't want this to feel like this is another thing that I need to do, but actually to be inspired by it, for it to be a joyful part of our roles. And when I was thinking about Baby Communication Week this year, myself and my colleagues came to these 5 simple messages that we can all share with parents to make a big difference in these early relationships. So I will just whisk through these 5 messages, and then we'll get to hear from all our wonderful other speakers. So let's go on to the first one. So the first message is your newborn baby is your best guide. So this is about giving parents the confidence and the skills and the awareness to know that their baby is communicating through their behaviour and their cues. If we can all be knowledgeable as practitioners about baby behaviour, we're able to share with parents about what their baby is communicating, and just being in a position of being curious and wondering, and sort of taking the stress away from feeling like all the information is to be found in a particular book. If they just found the right book, the right manual, the right information. These little babies are little people, and amazing to know that they are already communicating, and they're showing us how they're feeling, and showing what they need. So that is the first one. Nicely leading on to the next one about parents not needing to compare their baby with other babies or with other parents, because babies are totally unique, and that is something again that can be observed through spending time with their baby, and seeing their uniqueness through their behaviour, the things that they like, the things that they don't like, the particular ways that they like to be comforted, perhaps things that they're more sensitive towards. So that is something we can definitely celebrate with parents, about the uniqueness of their baby, and helping them to see that they don't need to worry about comparing with other babies. Okay, next one, number 3, is focus on connection rather than perfection with your baby. This is really important and hopefully something that will take a lot of pressure off. And let's not forget that parents, their striving to want to get it right comes from a place of for love and care for their baby. So it comes from the right place. But actually, if they can shift their focus towards connecting with their baby and realizing that they don't need to worry about getting it right 100% of the time, or if their baby is unsettled and they are really trying and they're staying with their baby, trying to comfort them, and maybe it doesn't console the baby immediately, but just staying together. Those are the things that really make a difference. Yeah, that, you know, the fact that the babies are born ready to connect, and they want to talk, and they want face-to-face contact, and they love their parents' voice and face. They love the cuddles, all of those things. So yeah, let parents know about the importance of connection. Number 4, you are everything your baby needs. So there's a lot of gadgets, toys, experiences that you are that you might feel you need, or that you've told through advertising that you need when you have a baby. But actually, we know that the parent, within the parent, is everything that the baby needs, for comfort, for safety, for play, for new experiences, and all of that driving the development of the baby. So the parent helps to drive the development, and the parent helps the baby to be able to regulate. So it's the co-regulation together. Those are the things that the baby's working on at this time, is staying regulated so that they're able then to take on the new experiences of the world. So there's nothing extra that parents need to have at this time. And then finally, number 5, caring for your newborn. There's magic in everyday moments. If for any of us that have had children or looked after really young babies, we know it's not always easy. It can be hard at times. It's such a special time, but it can be hard, often with a real change in sleep patterns, or not much sleep at all, and needing babies need regular feeding, and changing, and it can feel repetitive, and it might feel for parents like they kind of need to get through this stage. You know, they're not getting much back at the moment from their baby, maybe before the smiles, and the baby's more noticeably communicating, but we know that the baby is already communicating amazingly. But it's really such an opportunity to encourage parents that even in the small everyday things, they are contributing so much to their baby at that time. And there really is magic happening in the baby's brain. Millions of neural connections every second. So there are 5 messages, and I hope that you can bring some of those into your conversations with parents, whatever your role is. Now here, I just wanted to kind of highlight that all of these 5 messages that we've put together, we believe will grow parents' understanding of their newborns' communication and affirm them in their caregiving. All of these messages will benefit babies in receiving responsive care and interaction from parents who feel calm and informed, and those things together will result in happy, healthy, and nurtured parent-baby relationships. So there's a little sum at the end understanding babies, plus affirming parents, and we get nurtured relationships. So for this baby communication week, all of those messages that I mentioned, we've got on posters that you are freely able to download and print out and put up. There's a picture from one of our from a unit that has made their baby communication week display for parents to see. We also have on all our social media platforms, we have daily affirmations. So someone, well, it's our lovely friend and colleague Jo, who's reading out these affirmations in a really relaxing and encouraging, lovely way for parents. And then some information videos, which we've called Affirming the Expert, with the expert being the parent, to give a bit more information about each of those messages. So I am just gonna finish with this lovely quote that is from Erik Erikson, who is a developmental psychologist. There is in every child at every stage a new miracle of vigorous unfolding, which constitutes a new hope and a new responsibility for all. I really love how this quote captures the hope, the potential, the possibilities that new life brings in that young baby, but also the responsibility that we all have together to ensure that we can support the thriving of this new life. So I will end there, and I hope you're just as excited as I am to hear the rest of our speakers. Thank you, Inga.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for just going through all the themes for the week and for the introduction. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Katie Pannell, and we are delighted to have a speech and language therapist join us today. Katie is a clinical specialist neonatal speech and language therapist, and she works at the neonatal unit at Birmingham Women's and Children's Hospital, and is also a lead speech and language therapist for the West Midlands Perinatal Network. Katie is passionate about working with families and teams collaboratively, supporting development, communication and language outcomes and relationships. Katie is also an active member of the RCSLT Neonatal Clinical Excellence Network and supporting current projects for speech and language therapists working in neonatal care. And Katie's title today is Understanding Babies, Affirming Parents, Nurturing Relationships, Opportunities at Every Contact. Over to you, Katie.
Thank you so much, Inga, and thank you so much, Sarah and Brazelton, for giving myself and also the Royal College of Speech and Language Therapists Neonatal Clinical Excellence Network the opportunity to come and speak to you today and to be part of Baby Communication Week and this important webinar. Which focuses on parent-infant relationships and the opportunities we have as healthcare professionals to influence and support these relationships, which can then influence a lifetime. I'm just going to share my screen and hopefully technology will all be well. In discussions with Sarah, we talked about focusing this talk on understanding babies, affirming parents and nurturing relationships. So creating those opportunities in every contact. So this talk will break down, if we go to the next slide, please, Sarah, we'll break down the title and focus on the different areas described within the title, hoping to contribute to everything that Sarah's just talked to us about and contribute to the why and the importance of nurturing parent-infant relationships and how, as healthcare professionals, whatever our field may be, we can help to do this and to support our parents and families with this, with their babies. So we can make every contact count. So I'm going to set the scene slightly, which Sarah did as well, around brain development, but just really just touching on how that parent-infant relationship supports brain development. Then we're going to move on to understanding and reading our babies, and how this then links in and builds into nurturing relationships, which then supports our outcomes, future relationships, and well-being. And then moving into sort of affirming our parents. So giving that emotional support and encouragement to develop nurturing relationships and to understand and read their babies and to respond to them. And how within our work as healthcare professionals, we can create opportunities in every contact to do this. I wanted to say a big thank you to some of my SLT colleagues, Celia, Rebecca and Alexandra, who alongside myself have helped to develop this talk for you all. And a lot of this talk is based on their work and their hard work in this area, linking into nurturing relationships and reading babies' cues, and how that is then the building blocks to develop later sophisticated speech and language and communication skills as our babies grow into infants, to children, to young adults, and on into adulthood as well. So if we go to the next slide, please, Sarah, if that's okay. Okay, so I wanted to move on just to touching on brain development. So processes of neuronal migration, synapse formation, myelination, apoptosis and synaptic elimination will commence. And they are the building blocks for neuroplasticity, and the most critical and sensitive times for neuroplasticity are when these are occurring. So the brain forms or reorganizes synaptic connections, especially in response to learning experiences. So, in the term that a lot of us will have heard before, the neurons that fire together, wire together. Okay, and each of these processes can be influenced through babies' experiences with their parent and their environment. And that parent sensitivity, affection, and nurture are critical for this healthy brain development. Biological adversity and deprivation, separation of caregiver interaction can potentially disrupt this brain development, so this neurological development, and can limit that experience and that brain plasticity linking to this early nurturing and connection. Early nurturing typically consists of constant tactile access to the parent in the early postnatal period, and enables hopefully for our parents to have that time and the opportunities and meaningful connections to really observe and read their baby's language and their cues, to show how they're feeling. If we can go to the next slide, please. Sarah, if that's okay. So I wanted to touch on here is that your baby's or our baby's communication begins in the womb. Okay, so in utero, our baby's development is being worked on, supported by the environment of the utero, focusing on their cognition, so their brain growth and development, their motor skills, their sensory skills, their feeding development, their abilities to, when they are then born, to begin to have those foundation blocks to show their cues, to show how they're feeling, to show their language, to then later support their foundations to support speech and language development. And things that they might do in utero is mouth opening and closing. So they're beginning to use their mouths to think about getting ready to copy, to make sounds and to talk. And that builds on those connections and those interactions and those relationships that are nurtured as well. And they learn that their parents' voice is theirs. They hear different sounds from the environment. And they begin to be able to, in utero, to listen and respond to sounds and voices. And a couple of facts for you here, that around 26 to 28 weeks in utero, baby can demonstrate responsiveness to voice. And at 30 weeks after active listening is developing, and attunement to maternal voice is occurring. So fascinating development occurs in utero, and things like moving and turning to voices, so responding to those voices also happen. So fascinating things happen in utero to help our babies to be ready to start their communication journey when they arrive in this world. Sarah, please could you go to the next slide, if that's okay? So our babies, when they arrive with us, are communicating from the moment they are born. They're using their faces, they're using their bodies, they're using their voices to tell us how they are feeling. And our parents and healthcare professionals can work together to really learn about how babies use their signs and their cues to show us what they like, what they don't like, what they need help, what they need support with. And one of the best strategies to do this is to spend those meaningful interactions observing, watching, waiting and listening to see what our babies are telling us, to see what they like and how we can respond to them. So their language, our baby's language at this point is very much their behaviour, how they're coping and how they're responding to the environment and interactions. And babies can do this by initiating interactions themselves and engaging in and enjoying mutual gaze with their parents and family members. They can entice parents and family members to pay attention by moving or crying. They can respond to soothing, touch, handling, positions, voice and movement. They can self-soothe using their hands and their fingers. They can look and they listen to what's going on around them. They can show dislikes by turning away, yawning, sneezing, different hand movements, different body movements. And they should show their likes by becoming quite bright and focused with their looking, their smiling, maybe excited movements. And they begin with our response to them in learning how to respond to social interactions in turn. So this all brings together how babies and parents are emotionally and biologically connected, and this connection supports all of these interactions supports the synchrony around this, those daily communication exchanges which shape that infant brain development. And creates that nurturing relationship and creates that connection and creates that responsiveness. If we could just go to the next slide, please, Sarah. So in terms of them building on as healthcare professionals, in terms of understanding and responding to our babies, it's important as healthcare professionals that we spend time with our parents, really thinking about how this is happening for our babies, what our babies are showing us, understanding what our babies are showing us, and supporting our parents in terms of how to respond to their babies. So in turns, we can help build and co-regulate our parents and support that scaffolding for their own parental responsiveness with their baby. And as I talked about in the last slide, strategies might be observing, so owling, so observing, watching, waiting and listening and then responding and spending that meaningful time and interactions together to do this, to increase that understanding and to bring those jigsaw pieces together. Another strategy, or how it's been talked to me before by one of my lovely psychology colleagues in the area that I work in, is they reference this as watching, waiting and wondering. So actually also by watching, but sitting back, asking questions. So what does this mean? What are you telling me? What else might this mean? And, you know, our baby's behaviour and their cues is the first opportunity that parents have in terms of placing meaning on their baby's facial expressions, their body movements. It provides that dyad with practice for later language learning, where the parent will continue this practice by placing meaning on babble, looking, attending, different non-verbal skills, anticipation and turn taking, again leading to that more sophisticated speech and language development later down the line. And by all of this scaffolding and parental responsiveness, our babies can then begin to interpret and respond themselves. So it becomes two-way, respond to facial expressions, respond to gestures, respond to tones of voices. And they gradually learn to understand language and the dynamics of interaction as well, and supports that development for them and makes the relationships for them just as meaningful as that they can be for us as well. And all of this responsiveness, all of this watching and waiting, observing the cues really lends itself and leads itself into developing those nurturing relationships that start as our baby, start for us as together as our babies, but then as they grow and develop into infants, into children and to young adults and into adulthood as well. And spending that meaningful time doing this promotes that bonding, it promotes emotional connection and attachment. And it helps us to see babies as a person and really appreciate their individual and unique competencies and vulnerabilities within this process of developing those nurturing relationships and ensuring that it does become two-way. Reciprocity as well, so it's a mutual exchange of support and an emotional connection of care and love, which again, if that is two-way, feeds into that nurturing relationships. And I wanted to touch on really repair and co-regulation together. I think something particularly as we become older is how important, you know, if ruptures happen in our relationships, that we can then go back and communicate and repair them. And I think it's important to let our parents know that as we're beginning to learn about our babies, that we might not always interpret a cue or a communication sign in exactly as how our baby wanted us to. But that is okay. And what we need to do is then help to buffer them and to let them know that we realise that and that we understand and that we need to try again together to understand what they are communing together. So showing that early repair, showing that they're being listened to and showing that we're doing our best to co-regulate them together to build that nurturing relationship and to help us to understand each other really well. If we go to the next slide, I think building on that in terms of what I've taught you about nurturing relationships, and I think really to create that affirmation for parents, and I think something that we can really support for all of us as healthcare professionals in any of our settings, so in maternity, in neonatal care, into acute paediatric setting, into community, into when we're visiting in families' homes, is really supporting the information and support and implementation and carrying out really in the confidence to do this of skin-to-skin contact. And there are a plethora of benefits for skin-to-skin contact and a wide and huge evidence base, which is amazing to read. I've touched on here 3 things that really link into this talk and the webinar today. But some really useful papers here around parental mental health, parental bonding and responsiveness, and that infant mental health, and how that can be created within skin to skin, creating those meaningful interactions and those nurturing relationships, because it really is an opportunity to observe and watch babies, to see how they're responding, but to gain your smell, your taste, your touch, your closeness, hearing your voice, hearing your heartbeat. And I think from some of my own personal experiences, with my daughter, for example, having her in skin to skin, as we continued this from as a newborn, and we continued it as she continued to grow as a baby. So obviously then her motor skills and her fine motor skills became more advanced. She would very much in skin to skin stroke my arm all of the time when we're in skin to skin. And actually now she's 8, what I will find is that she will come to me, she will stand close to me, and if she's feeling a little bit unsure or she needs some reassurance, she will reach her hand and she will stroke my arm. And I can't say for definite that came definitely from all of that skin to skin contact that we had together, but it definitely felt that through that there was some connection formed and some ability for me help to co-regulate her and to support her when she's not feeling quite where she wants to be at that moment in time in her life. So I really do feel from an affirmation perspective, skin to skin contact is something we really can promote as healthcare professionals in all of our settings with our babies and our families. Sarah, is it okay if I could move to the next slide, please? So I just wanted to talk more around affirming our parents, carers and families. And I put together a diagram or a visual image, Venn diagram, I guess, on the right, just really about how we really need to be listening to our parents and our babies and listening and forming our relationships with them. And actually, if we do this then also helps into supporting our parents with their nurturing parenting practices, and feeds into those nurturing relationships, feeds into how we read and respond to our babies, to then feed into those future relationships and those future outcomes. And as healthcare professionals, it's really important that we really think about and reflect how we create that effective therapeutic dialogue with our parents. And again, that will be very individualised to our parents of what they need, how they are feeling, and how they wish to communicate with us. But how we approach our parents, how we say things, how we say things, how we phrase things, our tone really matters, you know. And our parents are experts in their baby, and we need to work therapeutically together to create that joint dialogue together. So sharing those observations together, learning how to support each other together, and working out what individual needs our parents have around their parental role, their identity, what coaching they might need to help promote that connection, and how they can optimize that positive touch and comfort for their babies as well. So it's really important we really reflect around this as healthcare professionals. And I'll have a link here which Sarah shared with me, which, you know, I'm really happy to share my slides, and please, you know, look at this link, but because actually it really talks about this in there, and really summarizes it really well. And if we just go to my next slide, if that's okay, Sarah. I think what I really wanted to do was leave you all with strategies to think about opportunities in every contact that we have with our babies and with our families. And the first one I think about, I actually did this as an animation, so I don't know if this will work as well because I haven't been able to share the presentation, which I'm really sorry about. But the first one that I wanted to touch on was visual observations. So encourage observations and discuss what you see together. Support parents to observe their baby's state, movements and behaviours and responses to the environment, interactions and cares. And then I wanted to move on opportunities to focus, encourage opportunities for babies to focus on parents' faces and voices. Watch for how baby responds to voice and changes in tone and pitch and facial expressions to build that anticipation, which then helps parents to develop their turn-taking skills with their babies at a later time. Moving on to knowledge of babies' preferences together. So identify preferred pace of interactions, cares, feeds, looking for signs of irritation, fatigue, satiation. So that then really builds into those opportunities for every contact and what we give to our families. Identify a range of communication opportunities. So looking at ways that we can support communication opportunity with our parents during wakeful times, play, nappy changes, washing, bathing, dressing, feeding. Really then looking at how I've talked about is reading and responding to baby, that voice, that touch, that facial expression. And then moving on to developing those positive communication skills, which again, with everything we've talked about, build those blocks for later speech, language and communication development. So how we initiate communication interactions with our baby, singing, reading, using simplified language, example 1 to 2 key words in cares and interactions, repetition, modeling language, creating opportunities for eye contact and use of natural gestures, responding to our baby's intent by through their signals and by commenting on these, and providing that positive touch. And Sarah, if we go to my last slide, which is the summary slide, and where I will leave you all.
Okay, thank you so much, Katie, for that very...
Sorry, Inge, no, I haven't quite finished. I thought I'd lost you all. I was really panicking then that I'd lost you all because I couldn't see you, so I'm so sorry. But what I wanted to close with was it's so important, you know, everything that I've talked about, it's so important in terms of forming relationships together. It helps to make every contact count. It helps to understand and read babies together to support those nurturing relationships. It supports the development and longer term outcomes and supports future relationships, longer term attachment, identity and well-being. So I wanted to say thank you so much for listening to me. I'm sorry that the tech wasn't quite as good as it could have been. I hope you heard everything that I talked about, and I hope it was useful and informative too. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Katie. It was both informative, fascinating, and very, very useful. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Love all your posters that you have generated.
Yes, please can I acknowledge Alexandra Connolly for those. She developed those 2 posters. I know that they have been on Twitter, but again, if you would like copies of those posters, we're really happy to share them. But yeah, that was all Alex's hard work.
That's wonderful. Thank you to Alex. I can see there's a few hands up, and unfortunately, we don't have the facility to have live questions. But if you do have any questions for Katie, can you please put them into the Q&A, and then we can take them from there. I think we have got time for 1 or 2 questions. But I just want to say it's just so lovely. I love your diagram, particularly around, you know, in order to support the baby, we also need to support and listen to parents, and it is about working together, babies, parents and professionals, in order to support that really early relationship.
Yeah, thanks, Inga.
So really good.
Yeah, thank you. And yes, I can go on to Q&A, and I can do my best to answer any questions as well. And if there's any other speech and language therapists who are watching, yeah, please do help me answer those questions too. Much appreciated. It'd be great for us all to come together about it.
Thank you so much. Karen, I will start to introduce you while we get you on. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course, no problem.
Okay, so you might be able to detect in the accent that our next speaker is all the way from Dublin, and Karen is a paediatric nurse working in neonatal care in Dublin, Ireland. And she has a passion for enhancing bonding and attachment between parents and their newborns. And she's also the founder of Little Roo Parent and Baby Hub, where she empowers parents to become confident nurturers through community classes and baby massage instruction. And Karen recently began training in the newborn behavior observations, the NBO system, further enhancing her ability to support and educate families during the crucial early stages of their baby's development. And Karen's talk today is Get In Early, using the antenatal period as a golden window for promoting the parent-baby relationship. Warm welcome to you, Karen. How are we doing with technology?
I have no idea why my camera is not working on my phone either. Can you share I sent you my PowerPoint, Sarah. Are you able to share that?
Yes, if you just give me 1 moment, I can do that.
Oh, I think I can share it actually. Hold on. Here we go. Is that working for you guys?
I think it is, Karen. Yes, it is.
Okay, so you can see my slideshow, but not me.
Yeah, sadly.
Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you perfectly, Karen.
Okay, so apologies for the lack of my visual. I'm so sorry. So I'm not sure what happened there. Is the sound okay on this? Yeah.
The sound is fine. Yeah.
So my name, thank you, Inga, for the lovely introduction. I'm just going to leave from my phone because there's an echo for me, so I can't really hear. It's a bit distracting. So thank you for that lovely introduction. It is an absolute honour and a pleasure to be here as part of Brazelton's Baby Communication Week. As Inga was saying, it's a huge passion of mine in enhancing that beautiful bond and attachment, especially in the early days of a baby's life, and working within the hospital setting with our little babies that are in hospital. How do we bridge that gap? And also in the community where I work with many parents parents and families from expectant, from pregnancy classes, all the way up to kind of the first few years of life. We run lots of classes in our little community hub that we have here in Dublin. So I'm going to be talking about getting in early, using the antenatal period as the golden window for promoting the parent-baby relationship. So a little introduction, I'm going to be talking about the importance of the antenatal period. I think it ties in lovely with what Katie was saying about how babies develop in utero from hearing our voices and their senses that develop, that swallow, and also their auditory senses as well. And also strategies that we as healthcare professionals can use to help in that parent-baby relationship as well, and some practical tips as well. The transition into parenthood is a time of many challenges and emotions, and it lays the foundation for the parent-infant relationship. It can be a very challenging time for some parents. Some parents might feel a little bit overwhelmed coming into the unknown. It's also a time full of joy as well, but it's also a time of what are the expectations and how will I be as a parent. Some people may feel that their whole life they were born to be a parent, and some people, maybe this is a surprise, maybe they had a long journey in having this baby, and everyone's family dynamic is different. So antenatal support and education is vital in helping and supporting. It's an important opportunity to help prepare these parents for their new role. We also know a lot more about patrescence and matrescence, which is the transition into motherhood, which is similar to like the adolescent period. It is a time of physical, psychological, and emotional change that we experience as new parents, as new mothers. And it's understanding that what we go through as well as new parents, and that will also help enable us to be better parents, because we'll also understand that we're not alone in this feeling, that there is a term on what we go through in that new identity and that transition into our new role as well. And pregnancy is considered a critical time of learning. So if we can get in there in the early days through antenatal education, we're getting a really, really good opportunity to help and prepare new parents for this transition into their new little lives with their baby. How do antenatal classes look like? They're different. So I've really been looking at UK and Ireland. Some are in person. I know in Ireland here, some classes during COVID, they went online and they actually have stayed online and they aren't offering in person. And really getting people into the room and having those connections is really, really important. And I think it's such a missed opportunity not to have them in person and to have them online. Because I know myself when, if I'm going on a long course or the evening time when a lot of the antenatal sessions are, you mightn't be fully engaged in that. And I think it's really important to get those people into the room, building those connections, but also so that the new parents feel that they're nurtured, that they're supported. And that's special. It's a really, really special time, being pregnant and welcoming a new life into the world, that we also need a bit of nurturing ourselves. Traditionally, education has focused on how do we deliver our babies, so labour, methods of labour, pain relief, holistic approaches. And there are some really great services that are offered by doulas as well, and home births. But also, what are we teaching about the parent-infant relationship? What are we teaching about after we have our babies? And is there a huge focus on that baby care and that parent-infant relationship as well? There's an increased recognition of the importance of preparing expectant parents and laying those foundations early of parent and baby relationships. There was a really good study done, which I have referenced at the back. It was a nurture antenatal program that was done, and they studied it in the University of Hull. So that's where this little quote has come from by Schreider Macmillanette as well. I recently did a survey, both on my social media account and to some of the parents that came to my mum and baby classes. And what are parents saying that they want? So we need to actively listen to what parents are looking for and ask them and do surveys and do follow-ups, because then we can't improve anything if we're not listening and actively changing how we are educating new parents. So 100% that were surveyed, and there was 90 people surveyed in this, 100% wanted in-person classes. 90% who had antenatal classes received no education about baby communication. 85% received no education on bonding and attachment. And by not educating parents on this, they don't actually understand what their baby is trying to say to them. What I sometimes hear in my mum and baby classes is, you know, they're crying a lot. I don't actually understand. They've had a really busy day, and by the evening, they're really, really fussing. So it's actually educating on parents on what their baby is trying to tell them, and it leads to a better experience by parents. They'll feel more confident in their pairing. It leads to empowerment and a lot more of enjoyable experience. That if they know my baby's not broken, they're actually just communicating with me, and it's understanding the different ways that a baby communicates. So like I was saying, this can lead to lack of confidence, and it makes it a not very enjoyable time for a lot of parents. And what's a little quote that a parent said was, I know there's a baby in there, but it's hard talking to something that you can't see. And even that word, something, it's a little baby, it's a little person, and it's changing that idea for expectant parents, that a little person in there. And when you're going for your antenatal scans, talk to them, take the photos. And also, like Katie was saying, as your baby is developing, like we know touch is one of the first senses to develop, and it's educating parents on that. So every appointment antenatally that parents have is a really, really important and crucial time that we can talk to parents about these things. Some of the terms that mums expressed after they had their babies, some of the challenges that they felt through motherhood was always planning, changes in relationship with partner, lack of sleep, it's not all rosy, I miss my old life, being the default parent, constant worry, uncertainty, guilt. And a lot of this can be helped antenatally if we're helping prepare parents by making them confident, empowering them to better understand their children. We may be able to change some of these words that a lot of new parents are experiencing and how they are feeling. Nice little quote from May and Fletcher, antenatal education can promote the development of the parent-infant bond by increasing parents' ability to identify and interpret infant communication. And some parents think a baby, they might fall into a nice routine, a nice schedule, but we all know that babies don't come with a manual. There is no textbook, and every baby is different. They are individual and unique people. And if we can educate new parents in antenatally and helping them understand that babies are unique, they're different. I have 4 of my own, and every one of them has been different, and their little personality show from very early on, like Katie was saying, from as soon as day 1 of life. And if we can help promote the development of the parent-infant bond, we are helping them to interpret their infant communication. Antenatal education, it's a really important opportunity to support expectant parents in that building parent-infant relationship. It also helps promote that beautiful bond by improving parents' ability to identify and interpret baby communication, that they see them. Like when I was doing the NBO training with Inga recently, there was a dad on one of the videos, and he said, it's just a baby. We know that babies are a lot more than just babies. They're little people. So if we can help educate parents by that, we are improving their ability to identify and interpret baby communication. Educating them on the baby cues, what they mean, the little subtle signs, how their cries are different, the skin-to-skin connection. And this will help improve satisfaction as parents, and hopefully we won't see as many of those kind of negative words that we saw in the last couple of slides, and an increased sensitivity to cues and an appropriate response. So they are actively responding to their baby, and they know that they're not spoiling their baby, that they are meeting their needs, and they are providing a nurturing environment for their little baby. So by using a beautiful Brazelton poster, how can we help support and educate new parents, expectant parents? What can they do while they are pregnant? So beautiful poster that was done by Brazelton. I actually have this in my studio, giving out to the antenatal classes that we hold there. We do like pregnancy Pilates. And also it is about mums and expectant parents coming together in a group antenatally and having those discussions. So you can sing to your baby, keep a pregnancy journal, keep your ultrasound photos, preparing by buying them clothes, preparing their nursery, writing a letter, how you're feeling, what your hopes and dreams are for your baby. have a little gentle boogie with your baby while they are in utero, singing, dancing. Enjoy looking at the scans, and if you have a partner, involving them in this process as well, because if there is a partner involved, and if they're not the physical person carrying the baby, sometimes they can feel, I can't really connect, I can't really bond with this baby when I can't feel it, and I'm not physically changing. So they can touch the bump, maybe when the baby starts kicking, talking to it and singing. So involving them in the process as well. So every antenatal visit that we have, every opportunity we meet an expectant parent is a really critical point where we can highlight lots of these little activities that they can do. So encourage regular bonding through activities, providing in a daily routine. This will help empower and to build confidence, educating on baby cues, what each of these cues mean, so that they can meet their baby's need properly. Highlight the importance of a nurturing relationship. So not only are we nurturing the parents, they will then be able to be better nurturers to their little babies. And we know that the first few years of a child's life are critical in building those foundations for their neurodevelopmental and better outcomes later on in life, and building a beautiful family dynamic as well. Using opportunities like appointments to encourage bonding throughout pregnancy, offer written resources, visual resources, and then stuff like, is there social media pages where parents can find some more information and resources as well. And again, it's coming into that in-person group setting where parents can talk to each other. And some feel, I feel a little bit silly talking to my bump. Like that other quote said, it's something that I cannot see. But it's encouraging that it is very natural, and it will really help with that bond and attachment after baby is born as well. So by educating during the antenatal period, we can enhance the parent-infant relationship from day one of a newborn's life. So we can get in there early, so they can build that beautiful bonding, attachment relationship, understanding their baby, and having the confidence to meet their baby's needs. So when their baby cries or their baby is showing signs that they might be hungry, that the parent has the confidence to pick up their baby, get ready for a feed, that they're meeting those needs, and they don't feel that they are spoiling their baby because they pick them up every time their baby cries. Because there still are some comments out there of, babies should be put down and it should be in a schedule, but actually if parents understand kind of following their baby's lead, it leads to a more confident, nurturing setting, and overall the parents have more satisfaction in knowing what they are doing. We know that, the average age in Ireland now of new parents is 33 years of age. So people are having babies a little bit later on, and they might have had very nice careers and kind of known what they're doing in their everyday life and their job. And then this new baby comes along, and they're like, what am I doing? And they kind of question everything that they are doing. Like, here's a lot of my mum and baby classes. They're like, I was really good. I was a manager, and I knew what I was doing every day. And now this baby has come along, and I don't know what I'm doing. And that can really lead to lack of confidence and a lack of enjoyment as well with the time with their baby. And also that lovely promotion, and also Katie put on that golden hour, that skin to skin, which is crucial. And we can have that after vaginal deliveries, after cesarean section, once the baby is okay. Getting that right, that initial golden hour, if we can get on that, we're building up for a really, really good start for new parents as well. And like I said, involving partners, nurturing the nurturer, letting parents, expectant parents, feel that they matter, that they are also nurtured, that providing them with nurturing will help enable them to be better nurturers to their little babies as well. They also need compassion and support, and to be looked after as well through this huge transition of the unknown as well. And we know that the first 1,001 days of a baby and child life are really critical in building their neurodevelopmental, their social skills, their mental health, their attachment and bonding. And if we can get in there during pregnancy, so that on day one of life we are getting in, we are building these crucial foundations, there's a really, really good outcome. And not only for the family, but also for community in general, and improved parental satisfaction. And like I said, we are building the foundation. Just to reference, it was Welcome to the World, Parents Experience Antenatal Nurturing Program done in Hull University, but I got some of the references. And thank you all so much. And my absolute apologies that I wasn't able to share what I look like. But I hope that you all enjoyed that presentation. So thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Karen. I think the sound went a little bit echoey again. I don't know whether you got two sounds on or whether there's still just one on. But thank you so much. And it is just so lovely to hear about the kind of importance of that really early relationship in the antenatal period and how you kind of get that across in your antenatal provision. I think that's absolutely amazing. And it also shows how important it is that we actually do surveys and we ask parents about their experience and their fears and what they look forward to, because we get some very good answers that we can work with.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much. And I created Little Roo from listening to parents, from talking to them, and that's how we started providing antenatal education as well, because it was from sitting in space with new mums and the lack of support that they had, and then working with other experts, bringing them in as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And I can see hands going up, and unfortunately it's not a live discussion. So if you have got questions for Karen, please put them in the Q&A, and hopefully, are you able to just to stay on for a few minutes to answer?
Yeah, I'm going to stay on till the end. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Karen. That's wonderful and lovely to hear your voice again. So our next speaker, and we have now been joined by Professor Kevin Nugent. There we are. And welcome in UK time, in US, and I know it's really early, but it's just delightful to have you here today. So Dr. Kevin Nugent is the founder and director emeritus of the Brazelton Institute in the Division of Developmental Medicine at Boston Children's Hospital, which is a teaching hospital at Harvard Medical School. He's also emeritus professor at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, and he was born and educated in Ireland and worked for 6 years in the island of Mindanao, I'm probably not saying that right, in the Philippines, before he came to study in the United States. And he received his bachelor's in philosophy and his doctorate in developmental psychology from Boston College. He's worked at Boston Children's Hospital since 1978, teaching and conducting research on newborn behavior and early parent-infant relations, and has been on the faculty at Harvard since 1981. And he has written many, many books, and very importantly is the co-author with Dr. Barry Brazelton of the Neonatal Behavioural Assessment Scale, where he and his colleagues, Drs. Kiefer, O'Brien, Johnson and Blanchard, developed a newborn behavioural observation system, which is used to sensitise parents to their newborns' capacities and individuality. Dr. Nugent's research focuses on the effects of preventative intervention on developmental outcome, the transition to parenthood, the role of fathers, emotion regulation and temperament, the effects of prenatal teratogens on developmental outcome, and the cultural context of child development. Professor Nugent directs the Newborn Infant Network, an international network dedicated to promoting the use of the newborn behavior observations NBO system and the Neonatal Behavior Assessment Scale, the NBAS, in research and clinic settings. And today, Professor Nugent will talk to us about the power of the newborn behavior observations to support parent-infant relationships. And I'd just like to remind you all, if you've got any questions, please put them in the Q&A. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Inge, and thank you very much, everybody. And very nice to hear your talk, Karen. I must say it was most informative. And so straight before I begin, it's a I feel very honored to be invited and very pleased indeed. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. It's a very strange day for me. It's a day of happiness, but also a day of great sadness, because yesterday, Colin Trevarthen died. As many of you may know, his work has really informed our thinking for so many years. He's one of the great pioneers in our field. And actually, he, born in New Zealand and brought up and actually trained as a biologist, but he came to Harvard to work with Jørgen Brunner and Barry Brazelton and Ed Tronick and Patricia Greenfield. And it was there he applied his really scientific mind to the understanding of the mind of the young child. And much of what I say today, believe it or not, as really could be through the mouth of Colin. He was not only a wonderful scholar, he was also an artist. He had a lovely flair for language, for unusual takes on the child. But more than anything else, I think the whole subject of intersubjectivity, and that the child is as much an observer of us as we are of them. That was really one of his great contributions. And he and Barry Brazelton combined to give the ideas that I will share with you today and that Inga and the Brazelton Centre UK represent. So that's a strange day, but I feel privileged to ever have known Colin. He was just a generous-spirited, humane, kind, witty, and really brilliant observer of infants and families. And so I'd like to begin on that. And now, just before I can go and share my screen, if that's okay. Yes. Yes. So I've called this title, as Inga suggested, is about the NBO, the Newborn Behaviour Observation System. Now, all of you know, and that's the basis for all your interest in the young children, the first 1,000 days are a time of massive brain development with lifelong implications for the child and for society. You know, and I know, and that's why we're really privileged to be working with children at this age, that children's lifelong capacity to think, to trust, to feel concern for others, to understand and construct ideas are being fundamentally shaped in these early years. Let me just take a quick look at this little 18-month-old to give you an idea what's happening in these first years. This is from Birmingham. Oh. Oh. And look at the look on the little boy's face. Now, they were given no instructions. It was a bare room. But what's operating here? But in this 18-month-old, I remember about 6 months before he was taking his first tentative steps across the room. And here he is, confidently marches across the room. Not only that, look at his eye-hand coordination. He reaches up, opens the drawer. And also, he knows the closet, what it's for. He checks the books. Books go into this closet. But also, look at his attachment, the sense of trust he has in his mother behind. He feels safe. And so that whole attachment exploration axis is beautifully exhibited by this little boy. And then what he has above any of us is that sense of kindness, the capacity for empathy. I mean, for me, he's a challenge to me, who I am. Am I like that with other people? How often do I miss people's feelings, miss the cues? But he was able to, if you like, he already has a kind of a theory of mind. He's able to read into the mind of the adult, who says nothing, by the way, makes no eye contact, but he reads all the cues and delivers this kindness. So by 18 months, this little boy has a sense of ethics, morality, a sense of cognitive awareness, motor development, and a well-established sense of attachment. So we know that all these things are there by 18 months of age. And the question I ask you, all of us ask, is where does it all begin? How can we make sure this takes place? What is our role? Because we know that successful relationships with adults and other children provide the foundation for the capacities that children will use for a lifetime. So empathy, civility, resilience, the things all of us as adults would like to have in our own repertoire. And the skills have been the difference between positive and negative life outcomes, but also for the future of the planet. This is how Jack Shonkoff's group describe it, what's operating.
A child's experiences during the earliest years of life have a lasting impact on the architecture of the developing brain. Genes provide the basic blueprint, but experiences shape the process that determines whether a child's brain will provide a strong or weak foundation for all future learning, behavior, and health. During this important period of brain development, billions of brain cells called neurons send electrical signals to communicate with each other. These connections form circuits that become the basic foundation of brain architecture. Circuits and connections proliferate at a rapid pace and are reinforced through repeated use. Our experiences and environment dictate which circuits and connections get more use. Connections that are used more grow stronger and more permanent. Meanwhile, connections that are used less fade away through a normal process called pruning. Well-used circuits create lightning-fast pathways for neural signals to travel across regions of the brain. Simple circuits form first, providing a foundation for more complex circuits to build on later. Through this process, neurons form strong circuits and connections for emotions, motor skills, behavioral control, logic, language, and memory during the early critical period of development. With repeated use, these circuits become more efficient and connect to other areas of the brain more rapidly. While they originate in specific areas of the brain, the circuits are interconnected. You can't have one type of skill without the others to support it. Like building a house, everything is connected, and what comes first forms a foundation for all that comes later.
And don't you feel we're there to be building that house? But I'd like to take it a step further, one that I'm sure fits the goals of Inga and the Brazelton UK Centre today. That is to focus on the beginning of this process, the first 100 days, the first 3 months, because we believe this consists of a series of pivotal, life-changing transitions for the infant, for the parents, the emerging parent-infant relationship, and indeed the community into which the baby is born. Now, we have to acknowledge that here at my age, I still have to deal with issues of trust, individuation, kindness that little boy showed. There are still challenges. But we're saying that these challenges of self-regulation, trust, attachment, individuation, they may be life course issues, but we believe the NBO approach assumes that these issues are being actively negotiated by infant and parents from the very beginning. So what is the newborn behavioral observation? It's a tool we have to access the dynamics of this particular moment in time. It is interactive, relationship building tool. It is a tool designed to strengthen the relationship between infants and parents, beginning of the newborn period through the first 3 months of life. Includes something as ordinary as tracking a red ball. Here, segment responding to the father's voice. And here, with the mother, grandmother, and the family surrounded the baby, welcoming this baby into the family setting. So the NBO is certainly designed to describe the baby in such a way that parents can begin to see the baby as a person and respond to the baby in a way that meets the baby's unique developmental needs. This picture from the NBO is one I particularly like, where the clinician on the right asks the dad to call the baby's name, and the baby turns to the father's voice. The baby recognizes the father's voice. Look at the dynamic too of the family, what happens in the mother's eyes at that particular moment. But let's listen to our colleague Susan Nicholson from Australia to give us a little overview of what the NBO actually is.
The newborn behavioural observations system is a very simple but really quite powerful way for clinicians from a whole array of different backgrounds and workplace settings to help parents with their very new baby and up to the age of 3 months to get to know their baby well. We're talking about us clinicians helping parents really start to notice the nuances of baby behaviour. The slight shifts in the baby's state from, say, deep sleep to light sleep to doziness to quiet alert, fussiness and active crying, helping them read the baby's state and be able to appropriately respond in a way that will build the parent's confidence. It will also likely build the relationship between you as a clinician and the family. And that's always important when we're working with vulnerable families. But I would argue that the NBO is useful for just ordinary everyday families. I think it's very unlikely that there will be a family who would get nothing out of spending 15 minutes with you as a clinician, just with you together, observing their baby and directly interacting with the baby as a person, responding to what the baby's saying in the moment and learning what makes a difference to their baby if they're upset, what helps them settle if they've been unsettled or fussy, and what gives their baby some pleasure or helps their baby to stay calm, then to open their eyes and be ready to be curious about their social world. I think that's the real reward of the newborn behavioural observation system.
Thank you, Susan, very much. Well, you can see from Susan's introduction there, the baby's behaviour is the port of entry into the parent-infant system. So we place the focus, frankly, on the baby's behaviour in an effort to interpret, make meaning of the baby's behaviour, along with the parents. And as Susan points out, the NBO is very much a side-by-side shared observation with parents. It's not a didactic, it's not a teaching session. And it's really the only teacher in the room is the baby. We're there to learn from the baby. We're there not as experts, not as baby whisperers. On the contrary, we're there as learners to ask this little baby what they can tell us about themselves. So observation is the key for entry into this port. And the readiness to engage with and connect with the caregiver is made possible by the rich behavioural repertoire that's present at birth. And to quote Colin, newborns are able to participate in two-way exchanges or dialogues. The NBO gives the infant a voice, the baby's story, but also the parents a voice. Who are we? They can tell us. And it's our goal, and I'll come to that later, to create a safe environment in a non-judgmental setting that makes it possible for parents to reveal their vulnerabilities and their hopes so that we can join them in trying to meet the needs of this little baby. And here's Colin himself. He was the one who talked about proto-conversations and the whole concept of primary intersubjectivity. And he was the first one to study what he called the mutual regulation of chats. They actually have their own rhythms, their own give and take, back and forth, and involved include a shared self-awareness. The baby is desperately trying to understand what's in the parent's mind and heart, if I may say, just as we're trying to understand what's this little baby trying to tell us. And the other amazing contribution that Colin introduced, at the time, people felt you had to be very objective to study babies. He said you could only learn about babies by engaging with them. And that was what he shared with Barry Brazelton. And that's what really led to this whole array of pictures I just chose for today, to say you can see what Colin was asking us. What is this little baby trying to tell us? That they have the capacity, they're aware of other people's thoughts and wants. Baby is trying to figure out what's in my parents, what's in the caregiver's mind, what are they trying to tell me, do for me? So their future is on the line as the relationship is on the line. But while the child is a born learner, the caregiver, we too are learners. As caregivers and learners, learn to communicate and motivate each other. And here is Barry Brazelton himself. As I said, he and Colin came from the same laboratory. And this was the whole notion of learning by engaging. Now, it's probably very difficult for you young people, since I'm considering you're all so much younger than I am, to imagine how much our ideas about babies have changed over the course of since I began working with Barry over 40 years ago. And even among scientists at that time, the baby was underestimated, undervalued, seen much more as a tabula rasa, a blank slate at birth, and with scarce evidence at that time that babies were capable of anything. But over the last 30 years, there's been a revolution in our scientific thinking, and I hope that Barry and Colin's work, above all, have contributed to that, and Edtronics and others, to that whole, and Daniel Stern, to our understanding of the inner lives of babies, particularly workings of infant brain. Let me take a quick survey, if you don't mind. What have we learned? This was the iconic phrase of William James: the baby is assailed by eyes, ears, nose, skin, and entrails at once, feels it all as one great blooming, buzzing confusion. Yes, at birth, it must be a confusing moment for the baby coming out of a world of lights, noises, and electronic contraptions. But look, 30 minutes later, the baby is at ease, organized, attending to the new environment. William James had not really envisaged that kind of capacity for the newborn. We thought babies couldn't see, but Robert Fanst demonstrated babies could not only see, but had clear-cut visual preferences. I think that's quite important to acknowledge. When babies are looking apparently into space, our goal is to see what are they looking at, and why are they looking there? So clearly they have a preference for they can see objects and colors, and like the red ball. And I like this little picture because look at it. Everything is engaged with that red ball. And in what Colin would call a pre-reaching mode. The baby is actually in a pre-reaching mode to understand the nature of that red object, which they hadn't seen, but this two-day-old French baby had never seen a red ball before. The toes, the fingers, the eyes, the face, everything is engaged. Babies can see, but what do they prefer to look at? Of course, they prefer the human face. And we've been well documented that babies not only prefer the human face over a sort of a scrambled face, for example, but they're able to also distinguish between different emotional expressions, as Tiffany Field showed. They can distinguish a smiling face from a sober face. They can hear. Michael Vertuyven was the first one to show babies could hear a sound as early as 10 minutes of age. But you know that even in the third trimester of pregnancy, fetuses respond to the mother's voice. And the newborn's hearing is so fine-tuned, they can discriminate their mother's voice from that of a female stranger. And I like the one by Whitner et al. That newborns can detect a missing beat in musical pattern. The babies were exposed to a percussion piece of da-da-da-da-da, 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 and then the voice came da-da, and the babies were startled. They already had anticipated the whole rhythm. They were sensitive to the rhythms of sound, but also the rhythm of the human voice. Because in fact, as we said earlier, babies prefer to listen to, and as Bill Pfeiffer, many researchers showed, they can identify and are attracted to the voice of the parent they've been exposed to in utero. Touch is also the most developed of babies. So Colin and Barry were right. When we touch the baby, something happens to our sensory cortex is activated. We feel, and don't you feel, the minute you touch that baby, you feel a sense of privilege, particularly if the baby responds. And we know now that mother-baby pairs mutually adjust their brain activity, especially when they're actively kissing, stroking, and using gentle massage. There's a sort of a neural synchrony between caregiver and baby from the very beginning. And of course, I'm happy to say for all the dads out there, for them, that not only maternal oxytocin is activated, but also paternal oxytocin is associated with touch, newborn touch. Heart and breathing rhythm of the baby slow down during and after being caressed, with no difference between fathers and mothers, thankfully for my sake. So when I first came to Boston over 40 years ago, and through the kindness of Barry Brazelton, I feel all the things in life happen often to the kindness of strangers. I was invited into his lab. And with him, I was able to see for the first time that, yes, I knew babies, I learned babies could see, could hear, but Barry put it all together that and could see the baby was more than a list of discrete behaviors, but was a person with their own individual style of responding, their own, even he called, temperament from the very beginning. And the baby's powerful gaze, as Colin would point, served to elicit a dyadic form of interchange, which helps a parent recognize the infant indeed as a fully responsive person with their own individual personality. These are the things that Barry brought to the table, that babies are all different from birth, but also there are differences in cultural approaches to how we look after babies. So for us, it's so critical. We are sensitive both the differences in babies' behavior, but also the differences in parents' values, attitudes, and caregiving philosophies. This is what I picked up from Barry all these years ago.
Oh, now I want to test him for following the inanimate object, the bright red ball. And he follows it to one side, then up briefly, then back to the other side. One has to allow him to go off and come back. So you have to keep tracking him. In this case, he seems to get caught on the camera lens, and I have to keep working with him to get the ball, get him to come back with the ball. But he shows so much alertness of his face, and he quiets his body down in order to respond. And he follows up a second time. Look how much he puts into all of that response, using the rattle on one side and then the other.
I just want to give you a flavor of the sheer delight Barry took in looking at a newborn baby, learning about babies. And that's when he developed the newborn behavioral assessment scale, and which was used across the world to identify individual differences in babies and to see the effects of things such as fetal distress, prematurity, and how babies were so different and how all the other environmental factors could affect the baby's response to their environment. So from the beginning, I noticed as I used the newborn behavioral assessment scale, parents were looking over my shoulder, were intrigued by what was happening. And we could see the NBAS could be used as an intervention tool to help improve the sensitivity and quality of the caregiver-infant relationship. But even after I brought this book out, people told me, yes, but it's very long and there are many items which don't really have much relevance to parents that are the residual of the old neurological tradition, many of their reflexes. So we tried then to develop something more parent-friendly. Take a look at this, the picture I just spoke to you about. This is from the newborn behavioral assessment scale, a beautiful response. But here it is in the context of the newborn behavioral observation system, in a home visiting context. So it's the same behavior, but now it's in the family setting. In this case, the bright-eyed, open-eyed, admiring older sister. And the brother still working on his little video game, actually. But this is what the NBO is. So we wondered, could we retain the conceptual richness and an observation precision of the NBAS with its individualized focus on the baby and still develop a flexible, interactive tool for use in clinical settings that was effective as a form of support for parents? And that's how we developed the newborn behavior observation systems. And that is with my dear friend and colleague for all these years, Constance Kiefer, Susan Munir, Lisa Johnson is now the director of the Brazelton Institute, and Yvette Blanchard, physical therapist and colleague for all these years. So it's certainly based on our experience over the years, but the shift is from assessment to relationship building. We hope it can easily be integrated into everyday clinical practice and in whatever discipline you are and whatever setting, well, hospital, clinic, or home visit. But the goal is certainly to sensitize caregivers to the infant's capabilities, vulnerabilities, but above all, the baby's individuality, and strengthen the relationship between the caregiver and their infant, and promote a positive relationship between the practitioner and the family. And that would be critical. We talk about it. consists of 18 neurobehavioral observations. And these items are designed just to show that newborns possess a wide range of visual, auditory, motor, and perceptual abilities that allow them to explore the world around them. At its best, it begins when the baby is asleep. When we look at how the baby can respond to a bright light or a rattle, how can they protect their sleep? Since we believe one of the big challenges of the newborn is to regulate their sleep-wake patterns. We also look at their muscle tone. We hold them, see how responsive they are to being held, and the activity levels, how much support they need to control their motor activity if it's extraneous, if it's overwhelming. And then we watch how the baby can respond to the human face and indeed to things such as the rattle and the bell. But above all, I want to emphasize, it's not a test, it's not an assessment, it's not an evaluation. It's above all a support in 3 critical areas. We want to understand, and I'd like to really ask you to make sure that to understand what's happening in the baby's mind. What's the baby's agenda? What's the baby trying to tell us about themselves? And also, what do parents want? How can we understand what the transition to parenthood is like for them? How can we support them in efforts to relate to their baby? But for ourselves, it's a pivotal stage in the practitioner's relationship with the family. We have the honor and privilege to be part of the family story. And we can be part of the family story if we approach with, obviously, empathy, but above all, a non-judgmental stance. We leave our expertise at the door because we may have seen hundreds of babies in our lives, but we've never met this baby before. So we're there as learners, as open to learning about the baby. So for the baby, it's a huge shift from prenatal to postnatal stage, and we have to find out what's happening. For parents, also formative stage, and for us, it could be the relational teachable moment par excellence. So just in a nutshell, could I just try to say about what we use this amour phrase, amour, the word for love, but in terms of what the baby's developmental agenda is, it emerges in a stage-like progression. Firstly, the baby has to, if you like, regulate their autonomic system, their breathing, their color, all these things. Then they can move on to organizing their motor system, tucking in their arms, so that they can begin to look around and organize themselves. There they are. We will look up tremors, startles, color change. We look at muscle tone, arms, legs. This is the motor behaviors, AMO, state, habituation to light while asleep. And then looking at crying, consolability, self-comfort. And finally, response to the face, voice, red ball, and rattle. And I may have to, please forgive me if I say you may have to follow this up, or I'll leave this with you, of course, but maybe Inga can tell me how much more time do I have? I feel very anxious.
Oh, Kevin, please don't. You have got up to 12:45, and I don't know if you're able to hang on for a few minutes after that, because you can ask people to put questions in the Q&A.
Oh, good. Very good. Okay, good. So, thank you, Inga, very much. And please forgive me if I'm rushing a bit. I didn't realize I have a lot of slides. I'll send all the slides to you, by the way. But here, I may rush through them a bit, so please forgive me. But what I want to say is this, that certainly the newborn infant has this developmental agenda to manage the autonomic system, the motor system, the state organization system, and responsivity in order to attend to their new environment. But it can't be done without the support from caregivers to achieve this kind of emotion regulation. So providing individualized support is the key. So how can we help parents achieve this level of individualized care? We acknowledge every parent in a state of potential disequilibrium and reorganization as they move into their new parenting role, the possibility of crisis, opportunity. And we are there to try to mediate this challenge. So for them too, it's another amour. The basic task is affect regulation to, if you like, and our goal is to help them reduce the level of anxiety, to make them feel welcome, emotionally at ease. to do our best to make sure they feel safe and not judged. So we're there at their side. And actually, even the whole setting, the topography of the setting, where we stand is as important as what we say, where we sit. In other words, we're there as partners rather than teachers. So affect regulation, we do our best to, if you like, create a safe, non-judgmental, welcoming, open environment for the parents. Mentalization. Our goal is to help them see the baby from the inside, if you like, to use Peter Fonagy's word, to try to understand the baby's mindset, the baby's internal states, to go behind the behavior and, if you like, interpret the behavior in terms of what the baby is trying to achieve. For parents, we'd like to facilitate their ability to see the baby's set of goals, the baby's hopes, the baby's dreams, and to embrace these dreams and join them in realizing them. And also to be open to the parents themselves. In other words, and to help them be open to the baby, to if you like, let go of the fantasies of the perfect baby, let go of the fantasies of the feared baby, and see the baby as they are. And one of our goals is to try to help them see the baby as they are, and to, if you like, let go of, which is so difficult. It's not a walk in the park. It's it's part of our, sort of has been emerging during pregnancy, but we want to be open to the real child so that then we help parents respond to the baby as they are. So simply this parent acronym is just an aide-memoir for some of the key psychic regulatory process in parents to promote reciprocity in the relationship. We know caregiving infant brain both change and grow in interactions moment by moment, yes. And we want to talk about these. There are now moments. We have to be alert all the time for the expression in the parent's eyes, for the moments the baby offers. And as Nadia Brushweiler Stern talks about, there are moments where there's a positive shift. That's something I never knew about my little baby. And we have to go in with these expectations. Just take a look here at Maya and this at 5 days. Well, I'm afraid Maya isn't with us today. I'll leave that in. You'll have to look at that, and sorry when I give you the other. So they're dealing with ghosts in the nursery, but parents, by reenacting scenes from their own unremembered early relational experience of helplessness and fear, may transmit punitive or neglectful parenting practices with their own baby, blaming the baby, if you like. And these ghosts make it difficult for them to see the real baby, and you're probably familiar with Selma Fiber's work in this regard. So the wish for baby, the feared baby, and the real baby are all jostling for prominence in the parents' hearts and minds. Resolving the wish for baby, and the feared baby, and the real baby is a core challenge for you parents. And if we have contribution to make, is to join them and say, who is this little baby themselves? What do they want to tell us about themselves? And of course, it won't take place instantly. This is a lifelong task to accept our children the way they are. This lovely example is, it's my hand here, when I was looking at this baby who's just being moving out of the neonatal intensive care unit on the way home. And during the NBO, at that moment, when I held the baby in my arms, let me say, I always feel a privilege when somebody allows me to hold the baby in their arms. And in this case, I asked the mom to call the baby's name. And the baby called, turned to the baby, and she said that, "Mom, do you know me?" It was one of these moments of beauty for me, a moving moment when I saw the baby respond to the mother, and the photographer captured the beauty of the moment. But even more moving was the recognition after she told me the baby has trisomy 21. And in fact, this is the first time she saw the baby as my baby. The veil had been lifted through the NBO. She saw the baby as a person. Yes, with trisomy 21, but her baby. And suddenly she saw she and her baby had a future. So discovering the real baby is one of the great challenges we have using the NBO. But we have to be aware of that there is a real neural synchrony between mothers and babies, and we'd like to encourage that, to encourage this openness. So when there's a real, if you like, attunement, It affects both the baby's brain and the mother's brain. So for us too, thinking of what we bring to the room, we have to have our own affective regulation in place. And that's why people being, many of my colleagues, and they've taught me the importance of mindfulness. When you go into a family, this event will never take place again across the lifespan. And you are being invited in to be with this little baby. So for us, I said, how do I feel? How ready am I? How open am I? So we have to leave behind all the other concerns of life and enter into this different world, the world of the baby and the family. So regulating all affect is critical. Mentalization. We too have a goal, try to understand this little baby. Who is this baby? So we can share the same affective stance with parents. Openness too. We're open to the baby. As I said earlier, I think even to this day, after seeing, I think, many thousands of babies in many settings, I still have butterflies in my stomach when I begin to approach a baby. Because I don't know what's going to happen. It's a Pandora's box. And we're there with a sense of both openness and wonder at what this baby can. And I keep being surprised. I say, my God, where did that come from? So babies still have all these strategies of dealing with the world that even defy our imagination. And finally, we, as I said about Colin and Barry later, we too have the chance to respond to this baby as a person. So affect regulation for ourselves, mentalization capacity, openness and responsiveness, because it's a validating strength-based approach. But I think I emphasize my time and time again, it's a non-judgmental, emphatic stance that makes it safe for parents. And when it comes to culture, the parameters of respect, concern, humility, and basic positive regard become crucial as the envelope for working with parents and cultures other than our own. So the issue of cultural humility, and by the way, first and foremost is understanding our own culture first. And it's only when we are at ease in our own culture, we become sensitive to the nuances and of the parents. So I maybe end up, I see you there on the horizon, Inga. I going back to the Colin Trevarthen. It died yesterday morning at 2 o'clock, and beautifully, in the words of his wife, died in his sleep. But Colin was the one who talked about baby as a storyteller. I've expanded that to say that the whole NBO session is a storytelling, story weaving session. And I picked this up actually from Aboriginal families in Australia, from the work of Susan and others, that the NBO is, we're there as spinners of tales. But there are about 5 stories. There's a baby story. There's a parents and the family story. There's a generational story. The grandparents, the parents. And as a grandparent, please exclude me at your peril if you're looking at a baby. The community story, where does baby fit into the community? And there's a practitioner story. So I'll end up by saying that we who are privileged to work with newborns and the parents have a unique opportunity to learn from the vitality of the child, eagerness to learn, and the openness to the world. You can check the research findings, and I'll end with maybe just this little picture of and I'll just go one. Yes. At a moment like today, especially in the light of what I said, I want to pay tribute to all these people, all of whom have passed away, some in recent years, and I've joined Colin to this. Little did I think today I'd be putting him in this list. Daniel Stern in the top left, Heidelise Alves, Peter Wolf, Bob Emdy, Catherine Barnard, Fran Horowitz, Barry himself, and then there's I'll think of it later, and Colin, all of whom have really contributed to understand. We're still really standing on the shoulders of giants. And I want to acknowledge that and thank you very much. And please forgive me. I think I rushed a lot trying to say too much, and I please apologize. But thank you very much. And I hope that above all, today I've honored both Barry and Colin in highlighting the baby as storyteller. I hope that the NBO captures the wonderful opportunity and privilege we have to be with parents at a pivotal moment in their lives, and a moment that will change, hopefully change their lives, but also change ours. So thanks very much, Inga. And now any questions or answers, I'd be very grateful. But as I said, please forgive me for rushing.
Thank you so much, Kevin. And of course, I would also like to say and acknowledge the sadness of hearing about Colvin Trevarthen and that loss. He contributed so much for our understanding of babies in such a wonderful and very different way. But I also like to thank you for this amazing presentation, and I know how difficult it is to get so much knowledge across in such a short time. But like Karen has put in the chat, that she could listen to you all day, and inspiration and your passion is contagious. I think that's how we all feel when we do listen to you. And I'd like to thank you for your contribution, particularly helping all of us in observing and listening to babies, parents, in supporting that early relationship, and just how important that is. So thank you. And any questions, please pop them into the Q&A, and Dr. Nugent will do his best to answer them for you. Okay, thank you again. And so we are just going to move on to our next speaker. So I'm very delighted, as we can see here on the screen. It's Mark Williams. And Mark, I can see you. Yes, fantastic. I was just
and thanks, Kevin.
Where is he? Where is he? He's there. He's there. That's good. So welcome to Mark. And I'm sure most people would have heard about Mark Williams, who's the founder of International Fathers Mental Health Day, author, keynote speaker, and campaigner. And after his own experience of depression during the perinatal period in 2004, he's spoken on radio and television around the world by changing policies to support all new parents and their mental health. And today, Mark's title is The Role, Responsibility and Opportunity of Practitioners to Support Dad-Baby Relationships. So over to you, Mark.
Oh, that's great. Can you actually see my slides?
I can see them, yes.
Yeah,
Perfect.
oh, that's great. Excellent. Thanks, guys, and thanks, Kevin, for exactly what we're trying to promote, really, is that interaction with the baby. But one of the things I've learned over the years, obviously from a personal experience and speaking to parents, is the importance of their mental health, especially perinatal mental health. Because when fathers are depressed, they're less likely to sing, read, dance, and play with the babies as well. And also, they're less likely to follow good health guidelines as well. So it's very important that we look at the more holistic approach, because obviously, if father is depressed, he's less likely to sing, read, dance, and play, for instance, as well. It just having a bit of problems with my computer again. Sorry. You can hear me okay, yeah? So yeah, like I said, I'm not just about fathers. I'm actually an ambassador for two mothers charities, and I actually campaigned for the Mother Baby Unit in Wales, and I reopened after 7 years. So my work is all about parents, parental mental health, really. But you can imagine nobody was actually asking dads many years ago, and still to this day, the amount of fathers not educated about skin to skin, as we know, that can really oxytocin, good for dad and baby. But also, what we find now as well is what we know that when dads are depressed, one of the biggest things that goes is actually confidence as well. For instance, as well, and the education, I feel one of the roles we can actually play is getting this antenatal education out for fathers as well. Talking to the bump, getting engaged, and the importance of their role as becoming a father. There's actually a science behind fatherhood as well, which is very important, which I can explain. Dr. Anna Mitchell explains a lot more better than me, for instance. So I'm going to show you my slides. I'm just going to see if my laptops work. So it's very important to start about perinatal mental health because, like I mentioned, a lot of fathers will mask those emotions, and especially if they witness a traumatic birth, for instance, you know, PTSD, which is an anxiety disorder, the witnessing or experiencing a life-threatening event. So sometimes that depression can isolate them and don't feel part of that process as well. And also, when fathers are depressed, like I mentioned, it may interact, you know, with the, may not benefit that child development. We know about 1,001 critical days, which is important, but we also, when the long-term effects, we know we can lower adverse childhood experiences if we engage from fathers as well, childhood trauma as well. So it's very important that we start at the antenatal stage to engage with fathers, because then, and to support them in a way that they may have a past history, for instance, they may have like bipolar or schizophrenia or other different mental health conditions, or like myself, it's for instance ADHD. I was actually diagnosed with ADHD at 40. So neurodiversity is a big thing that's coming in now, more awareness and understanding. So how we communicate our roles to parents and educate them may be different to parents who are not so not neurodiverse as well. So but I feel that with perinatal mental health, we can actually start at pregnancy, because it has far better outcomes when we support all new parents for their mental health. Because like I said, in my personal experience of working with many families over the years, not just in the UK, but overseas, if we don't look after dad, then obviously that may impact on mum's mental health as well. And also, if a father has experienced a previous trauma from the first child, is antenatal anxiety then could be higher for the next baby. And now when he's unwell, that could impact the mum during pregnancy, and that can have, as we know, it's another topic itself as well, you know, sort of things. So our roles really is to, you know, get fathers, engage with fathers in that 8 to 9 months, whatever it is, get them supported, explain about skin to skin, talking to them, all we know, touch, everything that Kevin just said just now as well. And then when it comes to that transition of fatherhood as well, then they're more educated. Because even I spoke to a father a couple of weeks ago, he just couldn't bond with the baby, for instance. He wasn't enjoying that experience. And when I explained to him about skin to skin and you know, engaging, it actually helped his own mental health as well. And his scans actually demonstrate this, that it actually helps the father and the baby brain development, as we know as well, for instance. And his mental health did actually improve as well. From my own personal experience, I didn't get initial love straight away from my son, but because of the trauma, I was just relieved my wife was alive due to a very traumatic birth she experienced, which I witnessed. But I think that 6 months I was home and intentionally, skin to skin, you know, I was at a time with my son, and that bond really grew then. And I've got an incredible bond with my son. My son's 20 now. But at that time, if I went back to work in 2 weeks, like for instance, that's why it's very important parental leave, for instance, we got to change policies, because then we have our time, and then we can actually have this education out there, and then the outcomes are far greater. So it's very important that we do promote parental leave for parents as well, and to include fathers in policies as well. So the high risk, for instance, I know I got a short time. So perinatal, postnatal, we talk about postnatal, for instance. When you look at the signs and symptoms of mum with postnatal depression, and if you can write them all down in your own time, ask yourself, is there anything that fathers can't experience on there? And you'll find it's not as well. And also there's biological risk factors as well, we don't take into account as well. So, you know, testosterone, estrogen, cortisol levels, vasopressin, and prolactin actually change in fatherhood as well. But there's other factors, environment and other things, why fathers become depressed and less likely to engage with their babies then as well. There's a good video, I spoke to the guys in America during lockdown. It's called the Still Face Experiment on dads as well, if you haven't seen it. It's on YouTube. So there's another reason, again, why we have to start supporting all new parents and engage with fathers as well. And you'd be surprised about the high rates of suicide in new fathers as well, and also the high rates of postnatal depression, or that's, I think in the Canadian study, is up to 22% now as well. But when we start screening and assessing fathers and engage with fathers, we know if are higher. So it does may have an impact on that child as well. So some of the things I've done over the years, obviously, we do a lot of antenatal classes. We educate, and also not just about their mental health. We do talk about mental health, but explain about their role, what their role looks like, the role of the father as well. And also, for instance, it could be, for instance, we've done baby massage, for instance. That's been very good over the years. Baby massage, which can actually help promote that bonding and attachment, as we know. We also support like systems, like for instance, parenting classes. There's a new project I've been working with the last couple of years actually, and one of the big things that that's out there is the isolation in fathers as well, the isolation and loneliness, and as we know, that can cause a lot of issues with fathers as well. You know, not in going for that transition with other fathers. So it's very good that we have other fathers going for the transition and with their babies, and then they start, for instance, you know, kangaroo care with the slings and all sorts of things, and starting to promote that bond and attachment as well. So we can all do it as a role. We can actually engage with the fathers. It takes 5 minutes to have a 5-minute conversation, for instance, as well. But even today in 2024, you'd be surprised that in some of the new things we done, me and Scott Mayer, that, you know, 80% of fathers wasn't asked once about their mental health. They weren't even engaged as well. And we've even seen during COVID as well, the struggles as well. And so it's about navigating that support for the fathers, you know, breaking it down, for instance, and have a person-centered approach with the father. As I mentioned, you may come across fathers who may have ADHD or autism, for instance, as well. And that may be different how they will engage sometimes with the baby as well. Sometimes you need visuals, sometimes you need to write it down, break it down for them as well. So it's all about that person-centered approach when it comes to parents and educating the fathers, which we're talking about today. I'm very cautious. We're just talking about Father's Day because, like I said, I'm all about parents and parental mental health as well, for instance. So creating that supported environment, for instance, as well, like as I mentioned, when the work we've done with fathers, again, the dads groups, for instance, you know, it's surprising how they mask those emotions. They say, "Oh, I had this wonderful feeling of love, this bond," and then 6 months down the line, or 10 months down the line, when I speak to them, they actually say, "Mark, I was masking it. You know, society is telling us I got to have this overwhelming feeling of love, you know, for my baby as well, for instance." So they tend to mask those emotions sometimes. And as we know, it's very, very common for many fathers to not engage with, you know, engage in certain conversations sometimes as well, for instance. It's very important that we educate mums on this as well. The fathers may struggle with the bond as well, because due to their mental health, for instance, as well, because, you know, sometimes it can look different in fathers, where fathers could be, you know, for instance, avoiding situations, you know, drinking more or drug taking or overworking, for instance, and not being part of that process of becoming the early years, as we know, as well. So it's very important that we create a supportive and break down the stigma around that. You know, look at the science. Of course, it can take a lot longer for fathers to actually have that bond, but we find a lot of fathers who actually, they do mask those emotions, certainly, and then we even having a conversation, you can actually say that, for instance, it's okay, you know, this is quite common as well. So we all got a role to play in that as well. So we talk about responsibility. I think the Maternal Mental Health Alliance, as a lot of people will know, a wonderful organization. I remember when they first started in 2012, when you know, for instance, their strapline is, you know, it's everybody's business, and I think it is everybody's business. It's all our responsibilities now to actually engage and promote that dad and baby bonding as well, for instance, as well. Even we can do it online. There's a big thing that comes up all the time, you know, our dad's always in work, or when the baby comes, and, you know, we got this technology today. We got education, online things we can promote the dads, you know, give it to mum, and then and the importance of why you should be educated about these things, like even what Kevin just said just now, for instance, as well, you know, like baby massage, you know, that you know, they really enjoy, they do engage with these services, but we have to give them the platform to actually engage in the first place as well, for instance. So I think we all got an opportunity, really. We have got an opportunity to actually, for instance, break transgenerational trauma. I'm doing a new thing at the moment called a fatherhood tree. So I'm looking at the relationship with the father and baby, and for instance, as the baby grows and grows and grows as well, for instance, and looking at our own traditional values and non-traditional values. Like the old traditional values, like my grandfather be like down the pet, food on the table, and then my grandmother would actually do all the parenting, for instance, mostly. And then my father learned from my grandfather, and he was more engaged with me, for instance. And I've learned off my father. And now my son, for instance, he'd be probably more educated than I was when I became a new dad as well. So we all got an opportunity to actually grow and let these the babies grow. And for instance, for not just this generation, for the next generation to come, it's about breaking that transgeneration trauma as well and other factors. Which and actually, as we know, with society now, society has changed now a lot more since 30, 40 years ago, for instance, as well. Fathers are home. Sometimes dad is the one with the baby, where mum, thankfully, is sometimes in Parliament, for instance, as well. So if we don't engage with fathers and the dad is the only one at home, then of course that could have an impact on that child, baby growing up as well, for instance. So now's the time. We know single dads, for instance, same gender parents. We have to start looking more differently now, especially in 2024, because when you support all new parents for their mental health, it just has far better outcomes for the whole family and that child's development as well, for instance, as well. So some things like as we know, and guys, you probably know all this yourselves. So, that the baby, a strong bond with dad provides emotional security and comfort for the baby, helping them stay safe. Language development, we know about the importance of fathers and reading as well now, for instance, as well. And that's another thing, storytelling. When dads are depressed, they're less likely to sing, read, dance and play. We know that. Less confidence. We have to, again, sorry I'm going on about it, we have to educate the fathers that they have an important part to play in society as well. They are there to protect and also navigate that support, where sometimes it could be different for mums as well, for instance. So it's about working on our skill sets as parents, what I'm good at as a father and what my wife, Michelle, is good at. And we work together to have the better outcomes for our son, for instance, what's worked for us over the years. Fathers play an engagement part, of course it does, as we know. And that's the thing, is cognitive development, social environment development. That father bond with the baby as well can develop social emotional skills, such as empathy and self-awareness and emotional regulation as well. So it's all the things we know about, but sometimes we don't act on this to engage with fathers and explain to them their role again, what I'm saying. Sorry about this, guys. Oh, my slide's gone. Oh, sorry. Sorry about this. My slide have just gone off. Summarize. I don't know if everyone can see it, guys. Sorry for this. Technology is great when it works. Sorry. So like you said, I mentioned about the scans with the dad and baby as well. The bonding can occur. Let me just, sorry about this, guys, for a second. Okay, this better. So bonding with the baby can increase that parental involvement as well. And that can lead, as we know, to lead into a stronger sense of responsibility and connection, a connection and feeling. Because sometimes, like I said, when the baby's crying, for instance, sometimes, we got to educate dads that sometimes when the baby comes to the dad and the baby wants to go back to mum, sometimes they get more off mum. And then dads feel, oh, I'm not good enough as a father. Why is this baby crying? Well, sometimes that could be the sense of different things. We can promote this during this period and explain to him, okay, maybe like Big, for instance, there's a lot of good things out there at the moment as well. But these are some of the things that can knock the father's confidence if, for instance, the baby's crying and is something that's come up a lot over the years as well, massively as well. It's very important that, for instance, when fathers come back from work as well, that sometimes they may not have the time to actually, for instance, change a nappy. A mum intentionally or the grandparent may say, oh, give me the baby here, you're too slow, for instance. And then the father say, okay, you carry on, and then he goes and isolates himself and lets the mum carry on with the baby. But we have to explain, but it's not just as long as the baby's safe, it's that interaction, that the sounds and what we mentioned just now, what Kevin just mentioned, just listen to as well. It's that interaction that's important as well. The more interaction we have with the father and baby, of course, that's going to help his own mental health, and most importantly, as we know, the baby's interaction as well. So the emotional well-being, bonding with the baby, can improve father's emotional well-being, as I just mentioned, and that role modeling, you know, father's relationship with the babies can model healthy relationship for the child and teach them to love, respect, and that communication is important as well. It also strengthens that family bonding as well. A strong bond between father and the baby can strengthen the overall family bond, fostering a sense of unity, as I mentioned. So again, if the father, we talk about perinatal again with fathers, like you said, sometimes I've seen so many relationships break down within the 2 years as well. For instance, 1,001 critical days, because we're not engaging and supporting dad for their mental health. And then, of course, that interlinks with other factors as well, which I'm doing a lot of work on now as well. Just watching the time there a second, guys, because I can talk about this all day, different subjects. It's 10 past now. So support things, you know, when father's involved in bonding the babies, can provide a support system for the mums as well. Shared parental responsibilities, as I mentioned, for instance, what I'm good at, for instance, my wife, and we interact, and that's how we, I'm not good at everything, as in, it was things as a new baby, I wasn't exactly, I've learned, but I've learned my own way of engagement and play and different things as well, which is important as well. And again, it's about that positive role modeling as well, not just for this generation, as a father, my son maybe a father one day, and then who knows, it goes for future generations. It's about promoting that positive role modeling as well. And again, increased communication. Father's involvement in bonding with the babies can promote that increased communication between partners. And that's the thing sometimes we've got to remember, is sometimes if fathers are struggling to interact with the baby, for instance, they may not tell their partners, and then they're overthinking the partners. Why is he not engaged with the baby? Why is he not barfing the baby? He could have intrusive thoughts, for instance. He may have these thoughts, as we know, with maternal OCD, but of course fathers can experience this as well. So when you look at the father and he's not engaging with the baby, for instance, just ask yourself why, rather than look down on him. I always leave this, that you should never look down on anyone unless you're helping them up, I say. So like, for instance, we can do a lot, even by engaging leaflets, information that can help that bond and attachment with the baby as well, and father. I think that's it. I think I'm just on time, actually. Nina, quarter past nearly, for questions as well.
That's pretty amazing. Thank you.
Sorry, it was a bit of a rush, you know, sorry, but...
Sorry, we can learn. Maybe we need to give people more time, because it's something that people feel so passionate about, and that definitely come out as well from your presentation. Thank you so much. And thank you. I don't think we can ever remind everybody, including myself, how important it is to always consider both parents when we're working with families and we're trying to promote that early relationship. And I strongly believe that we should definitely think about more creative ways of doing that. And we continue to learn about how to do that. There's one question that somebody's asked, Anna has asked, would love Mark to say how to engage dads in terms of preventative psychoeducational events in the community. Is that something you feel you could answer?
Or like social prescribing sort of thing, is it?
So it's asking about sort of psychoeducational events.
Do you know, this is the thing with me. It's funny because it's a good question, because with my brain, because I got a form of dyslexia. It's very important to understand this as well. It's like I got to break it down when somebody explains it a bit. Oh, I know what it is now, sort of thing. And that's another reason with neurodiversity as well, because when we do it, get its education across, You know, it can be difficult for a lot of parents, especially autism and ADHD as well. So if you could break it down, is that means like, for instance,
I can try because it's a question by somebody else. Please do correct me, Jayne, if I'm not getting it right. But I guess what she's asking is about prevention. And are there any sort of psychological models that we can be aware of when we're working with dads?
I think when it comes to the mental health, obviously, I always look at the personality. For instance, the Edinburgh Post-Depression scale is validated for dads and stuff like depression. We talk about that. So I think some of the things we've done, like a 10-week course, for instance, you know, is a great thing. I've been a new project I've been helping over the last couple of years, and then that gets the fathers talking, communicating together. I think that's very important because I'm going for that transition. I think I mentioned, but there's loads of things I can share with you. Oh gosh, I got loads. That's the thing with the ADHD. My mind's racing now, all different things. But yeah, there's loads of things over the years. I've done like online, you know, education programs online, different things, you know. You know, yeah. So yeah, sorry about that. I don't know if I answered the question right.
Please, if you're able to stay for a few minutes, Mark, able to put something into the chat for people to sort of, just take time.
Dad's Matt and Kieran, he does some really great work. Kieran does. I've known Kieran for a couple of years now, and so yeah, there's a lot of good things. It's very a postcode lottery, like you said. You know, it's very a postcode lottery. Scott Mayer, I work with, he does a lot of good work ourselves and things as well. So there's a lot of good things. There's not many out there. You know, the research is only starting to get better now because it was only like 1.5%. It was only on the father, for instance, and you know, so it is getting better. But we starting to realize the importance now. And like I said, you know, just the baby and also, you know, there's research that says that severe post-depression fathers can lead to depression in teenage daughters, Cambridge University. So, you know, I know we're talking about the baby this week as well, but like I said, you know, it's very important we engage with the father antenatally, educationally, to move on postnatally and beyond.
That's great. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Mark, for joining us here today.
Oh, thank you, guys. Again.
So, thank you. So, our next speaker, we're back in the US. I feel we're on a little bit of a tour here today. So we've got England, we've got Ireland, we've got Wales, and we're in US, and then we're back in the US. So our next speaker, and I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Jayne Singer. Dr. Singer is a clinical psychologist and endorsed infant and early childhood mental health clinical mentor with over 40 years of experience working in hospitals, school and community-based programs serving children and families. At the Brazelton Touchpoints Centre in the Division of Developmental Medicine at Boston Children's Hospital, she serves as Director of Clinical Training. She also conducts continuous national and international teaching and intensive reflective mentoring of the Brazelton Touchpoints approach and the newborn behavior observation system. She's a past president of the Massachusetts Association for Infant Mental Health, and she's an assistant professor of pediatrics and psychiatry at the Harvard Medical School. And today, Dr. Singer's talk is Understanding Baby Behavior, a model for parents far beyond the newborn stage. Very warm welcome, Jayne, to you, and over to you.
Oh, and a very warm expression of gratitude, Inga. Always so wonderful to see you, and my gratitude to the Brazelton Centre UK for inviting me today. I'm going to share my screen and also express my gratitude, of course, to Dr. T. Barry Brazelton, probably the single most important mentor of my professional career. And you can see us here together. If you can imagine, everyone, we are both looking at a very young child together. So the expressions on our face. So what I have brought for your consideration today in your practices with children, young children and their families, is the Brazelton Touchpoints approach. And it is a way of understanding children's behavior, understanding development. It's a very particular way of understanding development and using that model of development as our most important and powerful family engagement tool in support of relational health for everyone involved, ourselves as providers, and of course, children and families. So what is that particular way of understanding development? How does that then really help all of us to help families to navigate the joys, of course, but also the challenges of early childhood? Because, of course, we know that if parenting was so easy, there could be a little one-page pamphlet that families would get at hospital when the baby is born, and then be on their way. But navigating development, navigating relationships is deserving of relational support from all of us. So the key ideas that we're just going to highlight today is, of course, as we all are firmly embedded in this understanding that development itself takes place within the context of relationships. It's obvious but profound. Children would not develop unless they were cared for in relationships. Their brains would not develop. And the key idea that I'm hoping for you all to take away from this brief time together is this idea that development is, it does not progress in a smooth pattern that's always comfortable and easy for both the caregiving adult, the parents, or the child. So, touch points are disruptions in behaviors and skills in the process of skill development that occur just before an important burst. And that touch point can feel pretty disruptive to the whole family and even to us if we are involved in supporting the family. And today, we're going to look at how we can anticipate the occurrence of these disruptive periods and regressions, temporary regressions, as being necessary and a normal, healthy part of the developmental process. So often, families experience those changes in their children and interpret them and experience them emotionally as signs that something is going wrong. And we're here to anticipate and help families understand that those moments of change and stress are not only necessary, but are signs that the developmental process is proceeding in a healthy way. So, imagine a toddler learning to walk. They don't just wake up on their first birthday, despite the milestone chart saying first words, first steps at 12 months. They don't just wake up and start walking. Imagine them falling down and getting up and falling down and getting up. It's a little metaphor to help us remember that development is not linear. Development unfolds 2 steps forward, 1 step back. 2 steps forward, 1 step back, sometimes 2 steps back, 1 step forward. So, this idea that developmental process requires disorganization helps us to understand the difference between a milestone, right, which is the developmental burst or the new skill, and the touch point, which is the period of temporary regression as the child is learning new skill. Our strategy, our relationship-based strategy, is to come out ahead of these bursts, come out ahead of the periods of disorganization, and engage the family with anticipatory guidance, right? Anticipatory guidance, a way of joining families before and during that touch point period of disorganization. Our goal in doing that is to anticipate the strengths-based interpretation, the burst, and also to prevent derailment. Because we know that those periods of disorganization are predictable. we can have a reasonable estimate, even if a child's developmental process is delayed. We can see moments of change, periods of change that tell us, that cue us, right, that some disorganization is going to occur as the child is developing their new skill. Dr. Brazelton outlined this pattern, this predictable pattern, and you'll see here some of the predictable times of touch points in a child's development. Again, bearing in mind, of course, that all children develop at their own pace. And so, for example, we might not have a walker at 12 months. Maybe we have a child who's not walking until 18 months. Even so, as they are getting ready to walk, other things in their development are going to be taxed. They're going to fall apart a bit. Sleeping might fall apart as a child is taking a brand new motor skill, right? When they're learning to roll, when they're learning to sit, when they're learning to crawl, when they're learning to stand, when they're learning to walk, when they're learning to climb, sleep might get disrupted. Feeding might get disrupted. Let's say the 9-month-old pointer who's learning to use their index finger, right? And a pincer grasp. Brand new skill. But something in the system is going to show the cost of that developmental burst. Like what? Like 9-month-olds. That pincer grasp is coming in at the same time as their object and person permanence. Meaning they'll use their pincer grasp to pick things up and throw them, drop them, look to see where they are. Parents may feel yanked around, right? As if the baby is doing it on purpose. We want to come out ahead of those changes and help families to embrace the anticipation of disorganization as being necessary. What might that look like as the baby gets older? The new walker strikes out with their newfound independence, walking, 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 and then boom, 15 months becomes clingy again. Again, parents may feel sort of the whiplash of, I thought my baby was one way, I thought my child was one way, and now I'm discovering they're another way. But we can anticipate these changes. We can even anticipate these temporary periods of regression as the child moves from infancy to toddlerhood to preschool. Let's say the 2-year-old. Here we say, getting to know. Yeah, well, in the process of developing language, the child is also developing their autonomy and independence. So what can we anticipate with families as they are eagerly awaiting those first words, those first phrases? Well, the child will also at some point say no back to their parent, or I don't want to, or as the child gets older, you can't make me, right? That's pretty disorganizing and upsetting for parents, right? But as the child develops their own autonomy and independence, that's what happens at every touch point. Things get reorganized, right? The child is taking another step towards independence, and that requires the parent also going through a period of disorganization. Who is my real baby as compared to who I thought my child, who they were? Who am I as a parent? How am I responding? How does that compare to who I thought I was? How do I support them moving forwards? How do I feel about letting go? Right? So even as we get into the preschool years, 3 years old, 4 years old, bursts in imagination, right? Symbolic thinking, a critically important part of developmental process. There will be a downside, right? The child whose imagination is bursting may decide that they're not going to use the potty, the toilet, because that sound that the toilet makes when you flush it, that sounds like there could be a wild animal down there. Or their sleep might get disrupted because, goodness, if their imagination is bursting, then there could be a monster under the bed or in the closet. right? The 4-year-old who's in between that intense imagination of the 3-year-old and a little bit more of that reality thinking of the 5-year-old, the 4-year-old's thinking is still pretty magical. And parents might experience that as, oh my goodness, my child is lying to me. Well, the child is going through a period where they can convince themselves that something is true if they wish it and want it to be so, right? That's different than a 6-year-old, a 10-year-old, quote unquote, not telling the truth. So at every juncture of developmental process, we can anticipate joy and challenge. When the child goes through these periods of change, parents often feel frustrated, doubting of themselves, doubting of each other. Oh, parent to parent, parent to grandparents, right? The whole system gets rattled by the child's change. And those periods of disorganization can certainly feel disruptive to relationships in the family, and yet those periods of stress are necessary for the parent and the child to reorganize their relationship with each other. That friction that is naturally created by the child's urge to move forward, whether physically, learning to be mobile, mentally, psychologically, I'm learning to be my own person. That friction is a necessary, a positive form of stress that serves the child's ability to develop coping and resilience, which is essential for their well-being over the course of their lifetime. So, in this approach, we assume that parenting is going to require trial and error, right? That it's not a smooth and easy process. Just like development not being smooth and easy, the process of becoming a parent is not linear and smooth. The developing relationship between the parent and the child, not linear, will have necessary disruptions, tensions, mismatches, and moments of disconnect. We here, who are coming alongside families, can anticipate these periods of increased stress and help parents to be ready emotionally, to regulate themselves so that they can co-regulate their child, and to anticipate the healthy burst that's going to come from that process. We're here to help prevent the disconnects, the mismatches from derailing the relationship, coming alongside to help families repair those moments of disconnect. So as we close out our time together, I'd like you to think about something that you may have discovered in the course of just thinking along with me, or if not discovered, had affirmed about your understanding of development and about your practices with children and families. As a parting gift, I will share with you none other than our dear friend, Dr. Brazelton. Take a listen ever so briefly to what he has to share with us about this Touchpoints way of understanding and being with each other and with families. Take a listen.
Before each big spurt in development, there's a period when the child falls apart, the parents fall apart with them, and it makes a vulnerable opportunity for a provider or a child care person or anybody that's trying to interact with the parents to get into that system, explain that regression is a powerful force for progress. And then when the progress occurs, the parent says, oh, I know what I'm doing.
So again, I just want to thank you for having me today. Always a joy to be with my Brazelton Center UK colleagues. and join in the joy of being with families and supporting their developmental and relational process, and also be of support to families, especially during periods that can feel more challenging. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jayne. That was just a wonderful presentation, and it just reminds us all about the importance of curiosity again, and listening to babies and parents. And I personally love the Touchpoint model because it is about appreciating how well babies and children communicate, and often how it can be quite distressing for parents and misunderstood when they're learning something new. But parents generally get really excited when they realize that it's actually something positive that's happening. I have put the Touchpoint Centre website in the Q&A, so and there's some wonderful information, and there's also information about how to get the training if you're interested. But thank you so much again for joining us. And
my pleasure.
And I'd like to just take the opportunity to thank all of our speakers today for some amazing presentations on understanding babies, affirming parents and relationships, opportunities at every contact. I also like to thank you all for listening today and taking part in the Brazelton UK Baby Communication Week. It is happening as we speak, and it will carry on during the rest of the week. And there's lots of fascinating, brilliant talks, resources. So do follow us and go and check it out on our website, on Facebook, on Instagram or X. Hopefully you can access it from one of those places. And of course, please do not hesitate to contact us if you have any questions. And if you kind of think that you would really like us to focus on something particularly for upcoming webinars, then do let us know. We'd like to hear your suggestions as well. But for now, thank you from all of us at the Brazelton Centre UK. Thank you.